Good evening, everyone. Oh, I see that we have 4 people watching. That's great. Great. Good evening, you all. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. And I hope you have enjoyed yesterday's streaming of our second annual virtual festival of short plays. If you haven't yet had a chance to watch it, it's going to be available until Friday. So you got some time. We are so happy to be able to bring you this talk back with several of the artists who are involved in the festival. Our conversation tonight will be centered around the importance of representation in the theater, supporting emerging artists, and more. And now, please allow me to introduce you to tonight's moderator. He is the founder and president of Esquire Entertainment and is currently represented as a producer on Broadway with Ain't Too Proud and Caroline or Change. His other notable credits include The Inheritance, Betrayal, American Son, and It Happened in Key West. Please welcome Tony Award-winning producer Rashad V. Chambers. Rashad, hi.
Hey, how are you?
Good. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's so good to see you. Look at your setup. Looks great.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Rashad was a jury member of the panel last year and this year again. And tonight you're here to moderate. So thank you so much for all your support and help with the festival.
My pleasure. It's been so wonderful being a part of it. And I love the work that Abingdon is doing. So I'm here to be able to foster a really wonderful conversation. And I'm looking forward to meeting all the artists tonight.
Thank you. And I need to mention the work you do to build a community where all the voices are heard is so important and so wonderful. So I am a huge fan and I'm honored to have you here tonight. So let me turn it over to you because you are moderating the show tonight.
Great. Thank you so much. Welcome everyone who's tuning in. I'm so excited to be here. And I'm just going to start off this conversation with our writers and bring them in. It's my pleasure to welcome the writer of Scraps, Quinn D. Eli, and the writer of Wild Horses, Brandy Victoria.
Hi, Quinn.
Hi, Quinn. Welcome.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to meet you both.
Oh, you as well.
Same here.
Congratulations on both of your plays. They were really beautiful. And I know that Abingdon is really thrilled to have you be a part of the festival. I'd like to just start. This is going to be just a very organic conversation of us just chatting. And as we all try to navigate this crazy world and make a difference, we want to talk about inclusion and representation and a lot of the work that we've all been doing to make a difference. So I'd like to just start out by asking each one of you, how did you learn about Abingdon and what made you submit to this festival? I'll start with you, Brandy.
So I learned about Abingdon very simply. I was looking for opportunities and stumbled upon it and did my research and found out it was a really just awesome theater company. So that's how I came to know it. Yeah.
I wish I could say something radically different, but I can't. I think the trajectory is probably the same for most playwrights. You're always trying to keep your eyes open for opportunities. And I do think that I'm a little more drawn these days to opportunities where it feels like the commitment to hearing from a variety of voices, a diverse variety of voices seems genuine. I mean, in some ways that's just intuition. You can't really know, but sometimes there's just something about the language or something about the way the theater presents itself that lets you know that it's not just about optics,
right.
That it's about really looking to sort of expand the kinds of voices who are contributing to the conversation.
Yeah,
absolutely. I would imagine that it's very challenging, as a writer, trying to find incubators of new work and trying to find places that will develop and just give opportunities when, you're trying to just find that stepping stone. And that's what I love about this festival is that it's sort of shining a light and providing opportunities for, underrepresented voices that we don't often get a chance to hear. So, as we've been through so many conversations and battles over the past 60 months, there've been a lot of varying opinions on what the new normal is going to be. And one thing that I've really tried to do is build community while advocating for change. Some of my peers want to burn things down. I want to just figure out how we can all play nice in the sandbox. So I love to just hear a little bit from each one of you about, what inclusion looks like for you as a writer, and specifically as African-American writers in the present day. And I'll start with you, Quinn, this time.
I like the burning down model. I don't know that I'm emphatically against the burning down model, but I will say that that's kind of a new thing for me. I wasn't finding it. I've spent most of my career and my life looking to build consensus and looking to, just to talk about, to do the very thing that you're talking about. And right. I think I've had some real success, but I've also feel like, and this might have to do with getting older, I also feel like I've become more attuned to some of the limits of that. Right. There are, as everybody in this room knows, there are people who just don't want to talk and who don't want to be part of the solution. And I think that I have to be very careful about not exerting too much of my own emotional labor to bring them on board. So I think that I've changed a little bit in these post-COVID or these COVID years, in the sense that I think that I am, in my DNA, I think I'm a consensus builder. I do believe that, but I do think that recognizing where consensus is not possible or may not be possible, I think part of the maturation process for me has been trying to recognize those spaces and not to sort of keep throwing myself against the wall, hoping they'll let my voice in or hoping they'll let me in.
I agree with that 100%. I think it's a case-by-case basis. But for me, I also feel like we've helped build part of this. So I don't want to destroy a foundation that we also helped create. So I understand what you're saying. And there are certain parts of the industry that absolutely have to go and should never come back. So I won't completely disagree with you, but I tend to be a little bit more Pollyanna. So I try to hold it all together. Brandy, how about you? What are your perspectives on the matter?
I think that it's important to just be really tapped into the community around you. I think that one thing that I love about what I see communities doing now is that, for better or for worse, people are using things like social media to elevate their causes. I think they're making their voices more known. And I think that's allowing us to know how to include people a little bit more. I think that people are telling us what they need or telling us what they want. So I think it's important to respond to that and to pay attention to that. And I think that should be reflected in the theater. I think that paying attention to those voices provides opportunities for more inclusion. I think it just allows different perspectives to occur, to make themselves known. And I think that that's just really, really important. And I think that just allows for a more, like I said, inclusive environment within the theater.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And Brandy, I'll come back to you again. What was your inspiration for writing Wild Horses?
I had really a close experience, to be honest, out camping with this really beautiful group of African-American adventurers. And we were sort of, profiled, well, not sort of, we were profiled by a couple that had sort of claimed the space as their own, or expected the space to be available to them sort of at their whim, at their beck and call. And I just thought that was something really interesting to dissect, how we merge worlds, what it looks like when we merge worlds, what it looks like when you take someone who's a fish out of water and see how they respond to the world around them. To ask the question, are they really a fish out of water? Maybe they seem that way. Maybe they don't. Maybe they aren't. So I thought those were just really interesting themes to explore, just what it looks like to have a place in the world. Where do you fit? Where don't you fit? Why don't you fit? I just thought that was really interesting to explore.
Yeah, absolutely. Very compelling. You know, they say art often holds up a mirror to society.
Mhm.
And, you know, if you showed the play or this, you know, or the screening of the play to those people that you encountered, they may have no idea how they acted or how they came across, you know what I mean? And so
Right.
it's just interesting perspective that somebody watching this this week could say, oh, wow, like maybe I should rethink how I communicate with people or how I make decisions or anything of that nature. So I think that that's so amazing that you were able to into your work.
Oh, thank you so much.
And Quinn, how about you? What was your inspiration for Scraps? Of course.
You know, I'll be honest with you. This play, in some form or another, has been kicking around for years, and it's exactly the kind of play that I wrote it more than a few years ago. But it's exactly the kind of play that, you know, you're feeling a certain amount of rage. You get the rage onto the page, and then you put it away, and you kind of hope that it will no longer be relevant. That, you know, you want that rage to be sort of not only to have fizzled, but the causes for it, right? You hope that it will, just no longer be accessible and tangible. But I can say that, you know, after the murder of George Floyd, I brought that play out again, and I'll tell you precisely why. One of the things I noticed was, and everybody in this room noticed, was this response from theater companies putting up their statements and talking about their anti-racist efforts. But what I noticed was that those statements weren't followed up with any actual efforts to integrate more diverse voices into their programming. And when that effort was made, it was always made in a very sort of finite and small and limited way. So in other words, it was a 1-minute play festival or a 5-minute play festival or even a 1-act play festival. But you didn't see many theaters saying, we're making a commitment to, you know, a 3-week run for, you know, half a dozen for full-length plays by half a dozen different folks from different backgrounds. That,
Right.
you know, in other words, the kind of commitment that really cost money. And so that became, so I got, you know, it was the first time probably in my life as a playwright that I was getting calls, which was nice, from ADs saying, oh, do you have anything? Well, listen, I got a pile here of 90-minute plays, you know, just take your choice. And their response was, oh, no, 5 minutes or 10 minutes. So I went back to this play, which was called something else. And I thought, you know, and I sort of revisited that rage, and I thought, I feel like I'm being tossed scraps. You know, that I'm not being offered anything substantive or sizable, or, you know, a better way to put it, anything that's going to change the course of my career as an artist and as a playwright. So that old rage came, you know, up again, and I just decided to sort of reconfigure the play as a Zoom play, or as a play that lent itself to this environment. That turned out to be much more artistically fun than I expected. So I managed to have some fun in reconfiguring it for, you know, the current moment. But the rage that I felt, or the just in some ways the disappointment, I think that's actually probably a better word. Just the disappointment that I felt, that this didn't seem to be absolutely. We're hearing from more voices, and we're also, as Brandy pointed out, we're also seeing more people take responsibility for their own forward motion, right, in terms of how they're interacting in the community and promoting their own work. So those are all really, really wonderful things, and I don't want to diminish that even a little bit. I think it's terrific, but I think we all know that there's also still plenty of tone deaf gatekeepers out there for whom this moment is a moment to is really just an opportunity for some positive optics, but not really to affect the kind of change that we all know is necessary.
Right, absolutely. I'm going to bring in the rest of our artists to join this conversation, because I think that that is a great transition point, because we still got lots of work to do, even though, you know, things are improving. So I'd like to welcome the rest of our artists: Nikisha Daniel, Charles Everett, Katie Sexton, Kimberly Michelle Thomas, and Jason Williams.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. I'd like to just take a minute for you all to just introduce yourselves and for you to tell everyone what role you've played in the festival this year. Nikisha, let me start with you.
Hello, everyone. Nikisha Daniel, and I was the director for Wild Horses.
Welcome. Charles?
Hi, I'm Charles Everett, and I was in Scraps.
Welcome. Katie?
Hi, I'm Katie Sexton, and I played Jenny in Wild Horses.
Thank you. Welcome. Kimberly?
Hi, I am Kimberly Michelle Thomas, and I played Melody in Wild Horses.
Thank you. Welcome. And Jason?
Hi, my name is Jason Williams, and I played Malik in Wild Horses.
Welcome, Jason. Thank you all so much for being here this evening. We've already started having a wonderful conversation with Quinn and Brandy, and I wanted to just invite everyone else into the conversation so we can just talk about, where we've been and where we're going. And, for me, this community has been so inspiring despite, the hurdles and all of the things that we all have had to go through. I feel like people finally get it. And even though I don't expect us to snap our fingers and everything to be perfect, I feel like, we have an opportunity just to have more voices in the room and on all sides of the table, not just on stage, but as writers, as directors, as producers, as investors, all of those things. And so I love to just hear from some of our new voices in the room. What are your perspectives on inclusion and what it looks like in this new phase of theater? Kimberly, I'll start with you.
Shoot, I was hoping I'd be last. I think
You look so animated, so I thought you were ready to go. What were you thinking?
my brain actually did just start, so that's good.
Oh, good. It's a safe place, so we can dive in.
I think that something really horrible has pushed us into this current situation where we're considering different types of ways to produce art and to create art and to share it. So, obviously we have to acknowledge the reason that we're in this position. It's very unusual, but I think something that is really wonderful about it is that it is allowing us to reach out to people who, I think the inclusion comes in when we think about people who maybe don't have access to some of the more traditional means of getting to auditions or getting the type of training that I think sometimes people look for when they're actually going to put up a play, on its feet in a traditional theater. And I don't know, for me, I think it's been really special also to have the opportunity to bring in people from different parts of the country, different parts of the world, even. I think all of that contributes to having a more diverse group of people contributing to the world of art, and to have different people be able to get their ideas out there, their perspectives, their experiences, to tell stories that are unusual. I mean, Wild Horses specifically, this is something that is so common, and so I think so many people of color have spoken about not feeling at home in the one place where everyone should, when you're exploring, our mother, our earth, or our nature. But I don't know that necessarily is a play that a couple of years ago would have been put on stage, or that a lot of I wouldn't say non-people of color, but people who don't consider themselves from diverse backgrounds might not have considered it something that a lot of people want to hear about or talk about. And I feel so grateful to have read it and to have had the opportunity to be in it, especially. But I think this current situation in which we find ourselves is really giving us an opportunity to bring in people from all backgrounds and all experiences. And even if it is just for like short periods, short plays, short films, it's just giving us such a better and a different wealth of art to choose from. So I think it's invaluable, even if it is kind of a very, very solemn reason that we find ourselves here. I think we're making the best of it, and I'm really happy.
Right. Absolutely. Rome wasn't built in a day. And we want to get to the place where we're having theaters do full-length plays. We want the Black version of The Inheritance. Let's just sit in the theater for 7 hours and go through it. You know what I mean? We deserve that opportunity as well.
Yes,
but,
long day's journey,
Yes, exactly.
Let's get
But
it done.
that's inspiring, even if it's starting with a short play or a short film. It's just being able to cultivate those relationships and show the work. Nikisha, I'd like to come to you as a director and sort of ask your perspective on this, because there are some amazing female directors of color working off Broadway and all around the country, but there hasn't been a lot of specifically Black female directors on Broadway yet. So what would you like to see in the future as we have this conversation about inclusion and trying to make a difference?
Honestly, I would like to see more. And I would like to see what I see now with directors on Broadway, as there is a diversity within certain genders. Like, there aren't many Black female directors, but there are quite a few Black male directors on Broadway and who have been there throughout the years. And it would be lovely to see a female version of a George C. Wolfe, a female version of a Kenny Leon, or, these other people who have made their way and been able to create sustainable careers and dip on and off of Broadway and really build lives. And it's interesting because I'm also an educator, and as I'm teaching my students about African American theater, and you see the same names come up, and now as I'm sorting through directors, I'm reaching very far back to pull up examples of female directors like Finette Carroll, and teaching them, who's come before, but also can we pave the way for female directors of this time who bring the sensibilities of this moment. Camille A. Brown is having a fantastic moment, and I love that, and I want more of it, and more opportunities for more perspectives, because we don't all think alike. Like, Black female directors are not a monolith.
Right.
And I'd love to see more musical theater Black female directors, absolutely, which is starting, I think, to happen. And I just want that to further, so that we can continue the legacy and not feel like we're always starting over. It's always feeling like a starting over. And I'm like, there's a legacy. Let's draw that out. And let's make this an actual viable option and not a fluke, is what it tends to feel like. So.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
thank you for that.
Of course.
I'm going to switch gears a little bit so we can hear from some of our other panelists. But I'd like to just ask just a general question of, why is it important to have representation in theater, building upon what Nikisha just said? Charles, how about you?
Well, I think it's great that we're having this conversation, and it seems like most people want to do the right thing. They want to make it right, but it also feels like they're trying to do it from the bottom up instead of the top down. And as we all know, it's damn near impossible to start at the bottom and get to the top in this business. We need to kind of foster inclusivity all the way up the chain, and I think it's important because this is our culture, this is our history, and if you see what's happening all around the country is our history is being altered to make it so it doesn't upset certain people, and what happens then is history gets erased, and we are the history, so we need to be able to tell our stories, period.
Great, thank you. Katie?
I was thinking a lot about this, and as an actor, drawing upon the opportunities that I've had, or the shows that I've dreamt of being in, or all that stuff, and it has really been brought to my attention. I've been thinking about it a lot, especially the past year and a half, that so much of theater, not just Broadway, not just off Broadway, theater opportunities around the country are often so white. You know, like they do the classics, the Oklahomas, you know what I mean? And it's like, for communities that aren't just Broadway, for the actors or the people that want to be directors that aren't in New York but want to have the opportunity to do so, I can't imagine what that's like, because only very white theater is the only stuff that gets produced, especially in the small towns of the community theaters that, you know, like, so that's been on my mind a lot lately. And it makes me sad for, you know, the children of color that seek opportunities in their community. And the experience that I've had with theater and music and all that, and that kind of like saving my life, and like thinking back and being like, well, it's just a lot of white kids. And I can only imagine, I can't imagine, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But so I think it's extremely important from the bottom up, in the sense of like communities and up, you know, from little towns in Indiana to Broadway. Like, it's not just Broadway. It's not just the commercial stuff. That needs to be there so that people can see that it's happening and accept it, and have people to idolize and to chase, to have those dreams to chase. But yeah, I think it's a whole bigger picture than just Broadway and off Broadway.
Yeah, I agree. And being able to really have an opportunity to present new work. Now, we understand that every organization around the country doesn't have the resources to develop. But for the ones that do, you know, being able to do new work, not just doing Fences and Raising the Sun every year. You know, we love them. They're classics. But you know, we how can we have, you know, the next August Wilson if no one is given a chance to have their new work produced? So that's something that I hope is also a part of the conversation, and that, you know, more theater companies are commissioning writers and, you know, optioning new work so that we can have all of those perspectives. And Jason, I'm going to go to you because we haven't heard from you yet. Would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, you know, I was in children's theater for a very long time. And we would do talkbacks with kids after shows. And it was one of my favorite things to do, because I always told the story about how when I was in 3rd grade, we did Oliver at my elementary school. And the only version of Oliver I had seen was the movie. So I remember telling my mom, you know, oh, they're doing Oliver. I can't be in Oliver. There are no Black people in Oliver. And she was just like, you can do whatever you want. You know, I had no clue that I could do something that I had only been seeing white people do. And that is why, that's one of the reasons I got into theater, was because I remember what that was like growing up, not seeing myself and thinking, oh, well, then that's not for me. And it's inclusion and representation is so important in that way. Even when especially when you're talking about playwrights and things, like you just don't know what you can't do, or you don't know what you can do unless you see someone that looks like you doing it. I had no idea this could be a career for me before I saw that. So yeah, I just think it's having people on stage in its most basic form. Having people on stage that look like you is so much more important than people will realize. And not just, and when we talk about small theaters not being able to, you know, produce new work, like I completely understand that. But when we are putting on the classics, when we're putting on the, you know, the old school musicals and plays, it's like, let's reimagine it and let's just cast people from our community. It doesn't have to be, you know, certain anything. Oh, we can't do this because this. Can't we do this because of this? It's like, especially those old, you know, old school musicals, like choose Oklahoma as an example, but like throw the entire community in there. What does it matter? You know, we're singing great music. We're singing fun music. That's a beautiful musical. Let's just have fun doing it. So with who we have in our community. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. No, it's so important. And I'm sure each one of us here can remember a show or a moment or something in our lives or our childhoods that made us excited about being a part of this business. Whether you knew that it was tangible to make a career out of it or not, but like that thing that sort of made you go, I want to do that, or I want to be a part of that, right? And so that's the beauty of being able to share and having representation for that very reason. Because I don't think many of us would be here if we hadn't seen, you know, I know Viola Davis always talks about seeing Cicely Tyson in, I'm blanking on the title now, but the Jane Pittman movie, you know what I mean? So it's just so important to be able to have that and to see yourself reflected in that way. So sort of on those lines, you know, just talking about sort of new narratives. What is everyone excited about, you know, in introducing new artists or emerging artists? Quinn, for you, I know that you probably consider yourself seasoned, but you know, but
that was such a polite word. Thank you so much.
But in terms of, you know, the stack of, you know, plays that you have that you're trying to get out there, like what does it mean to you to have theater companies take a chance on emerging artists?
Yeah, no, I think it's really important. I mean, it feels like at this point such a cliche to say it. You know, it feels like it's understood, it's implicit that we want to be as diverse as we can. But I really do think that we're strengthened by it. We're, you know, our sense of the world expands as a result. Everybody benefits when we hear from more and more voices in really tangible ways. And I think just giving, you know, I'm sure everybody in this room, we feel like, you know, we're just as locked into certain sensibilities as anyone else, right? So we can be just as, you know, going to see. I saw, you know, I see theater sometimes by a local company where they're sort of struggling with a lot of different emotional issues, and then doing sort of plays about it and opening up my eyes to stuff you know, right here in my community that I wasn't even aware of. So I just think that, you know, shaking off the idea that there's a kind of normative experience of what we should be seeing in front of us. I think the minute we shake that off, everybody benefits, because of course nobody's normal, right? And so I think once we all are made to understand that there really is room for us at the table, I really mean it when I say everybody benefits. And the minute that happens, I think the world does, just by definition, gets better, because suddenly there's a kind of communication that didn't exist before.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Katie, we have a question for you.
Okay.
What was it like as an actor playing a Karen in 2021?
Oh, goodness. Well, you know, honestly, what I thought a lot about in doing this was microaggressions and what that can look like, and how tiny they can be, but how much of an effect that can still have on people. And I mean, it was written really, really well. Brandy did a fantastic job where there's levity in it, and there's, you know, a seemingly innocent intention, coming over to say hi to the neighbors, not knowing who they are. But, you know, it's a what I've noticed, especially when you see the videos of Karens and how they respond to certain situations, it seems a lot of lack of control. They're losing lack of control, and they're insecure. And so it's that gripping for control over a situation that they have no business having control over, and trying to find some sort of power in a situation that is none of their business, you know? So it was an interesting thing to play. You know, obviously it makes you look at yourself and your own, not only the things that you've seen people do in situations like that are really inappropriate, but it makes you look at yourself too, and make sure that oh gosh, have I ever done anything like this before? Which again is good writing, and it's good storytelling when it makes you look at yourself and look at your own behavior and make sure that, like, oh, that is bad. Have I done that? God, I hope not. You know. But I had a lot of fun with Jenny, because she's a little bit of she's an idiot. She doesn't know what she's doing. She's a total clown. Again, trying to have control over a situation. She has no business. There's nothing wrong making a problem out of nothing. So
Right.
It was fun, but also really reflective and really interesting to play and dive into.
Right. Thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
This just made me think of something. I'm probably going to push the envelope a little bit, but if that character, was working in theater and that video had gone viral, she would have been likely fired.
Yes.
So as we talk about, moving forward and trying to, come together, my language, not everyone's language. I'm very curious on people's perspectives on cancel culture and how we allow people to make mistakes, but also allow them to atone and make up for the mistake that they made. Does anybody have perspectives on just how we can continue to all thrive while we're learning? And this is not just a race thing, but this is a gender or class. We're all navigating new territory as we support, our trans community and non-binary community. Sometimes we slip up and we may misgender someone, or so I'm just very curious about how we can foster community, while we sort of educate and also allow for, a little bit of learning curve.
Go, Jason.
I love this question. And I just wanted to say, I feel like when we talk, I feel like cancel culture has now become this giant umbrella of a phrase that includes everything under it. It's like you try to hold someone accountable for something. It's like, I'm being canceled. It's like, well, wait a minute. We're just saying, listen, maybe think about this. Maybe think about what you said. And then the double down happens. The defensiveness happens. And then that's when the mob, from what I've seen, that's when the mob jumps on. And so I feel like, I don't know that I really feel like there is a thing as cancel culture. I don't know if I feel like that exists. I feel like we've taken this phrase, which is actually, a phrase from our community and from the Black community, being canceled. Oh, so-and-so's being canceled, something like that. It didn't mean what it's now become. Right. And I think it has become something to take the place of people being held accountable for behavior that does not change, or behavior, from way back when, but like we said, we still see patterns of that behavior now. I think that all of that's getting lost because the phrase cancel culture has become such a buzzword. Sure. And it's a word to fight against.
That's very valid. And I agree to a certain extent. I think people should be held accountable. The distinguishing factor for me is that now, because we live in such a vibrant social media world, that people often don't take the time to get the entire story before they completely retweet it or co-sign or whatever. And I think that's sort of where that canceling comes from. Not about holding people accountable, but just automatically assuming that the person was wrong before really understanding. And so I love to just, find a way to if you're wrong, you're wrong. But at the same time, can we actually know that you're wrong as opposed to just being perceived wrong? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Nikisha, were you going to say something?
Oh yeah. I was going to say it's like the learning in real time, but in front of the entire world because of the moment that we're in collectively. And for me, it becomes a conversation of integrity and personal responsibility. but also in grace.
Yes.
And
I love that word.
And understanding, yeah, that it's taking a lot of what I feel is lacking in integrity in this moment to understand that what you say isn't always going to be received in the way that you want it to say, or having that collective vision to see how you can really impact things and how we as human beings in this moment, because our reach is so far, really do impact more than we think. And it's also the collective fever of, it's easy to catch a wave. You know, these things that happen, the fact that cancel culture, this whole thing has caught on, it's a wave that we're all riding because it feels exciting, it's intense, and we're all feeling these things in this moment, and it's all just happening. And sometimes you get on the ride and you can't get off, right? For better or worse. And so it's definitely given me, and watching all of these things happen, a moment of pause to step back and also go, can I step back from certain things and see the entire perspective? How can I do that? Everyone isn't going to do that. So is this a moment to just let it work its way out, especially as I'm watching it happen? I was telling my friends, I'm having a double moment and watching what's happening societally and watching it happen in the theater community at the same time. And as these parallels are happening, trying to make sense of all of it. And how can we actually work through it and learn from it, but also bring ourselves together in it. So it's a moment that I think was gonna happen and needed to happen in a lot of ways, and we'll figure it out as we're moving through it. But I think we can learn a lot from this moment. Moving forward, and how we handle ourselves, how we all conduct ourselves in this new space, because we've never had this. I still reminisce about my grandma's kitchen phone and being able to, you know, go outside until the street lights came on and nobody knew where I was, and that was fine. But now we know everything and we see everything, and we feel that it is our right to comment on everything. So we're all navigating this new space, and there's a lot of ups and a lot of downs, and we're just gonna hopefully keep navigating until we figure it all out, if we ever do. But you know, I'm like, it's the human experience, and that's what we're all on.
It is, and change starts with conversations like this. Yeah. People coming together, people sharing, people providing safe spaces for others to communicate, maybe make mistakes, maybe learn, maybe grow. But I believe that we all have to just keep communicating so that we can try to get to the other side together. And we're almost out of time. So I'd like to just ask everyone one final question. And I'd like you sort of to finish this sentence for me. I dream of a theater community that, and maybe just a sentence, a couple of words, but what is your hope as we move forward? I dream of a theater community that.
Like, can I go? Can I say?
Yes, you can.
Yeah. I'll say, I dream of a theater community that is a community. In every sense of the word.
That's great.
Amen. Kimberly.
You're good. You're good. Oh no! Now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. I dream of a theater community that looks like the world that I live in, is as colorful and bold and diverse and beautiful as the world that I live in.
Thank you. Quinn.
I dream of a theater community where the word inclusion is action, and that not just a letter in the phrase DEI, but is action. It really leads to really bringing the voices in and the bodies in and the perspectives in that can make a meaningful difference in how things are done. So I look for I look for a world in which inclusion is action.
Thank you. Katie.
I dream of a I dream of a theater community that is full of love and acceptance of everyone and everyone's story, and doesn't look for opportunities to tear each other down. Just love.
Charles.
I dream of a theater community that doesn't need to actively check diversity boxes because they just are.
Amen. Brandy.
Oh my goodness, I love that one. How do I follow that? I dream of a theater community that has the audacity to do what it needs to do and what it wants to do when it needs to do it.
Thank you. And Jason.
I'm laughing because Charles literally was in my brain. But I dream of a theater community that doesn't view diversity as a fad, that is just what it is.
Amen. Mm-hmm. Let's all keep dreaming. Thank you all so much for this insightful conversation. It's been such a pleasure meeting you all. I hope our paths cross again, and that I will be able to support your work in the near future. Thank you for joining us. And Beatrice, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much, all of you guys. On behalf of Abingdon, I got very emotional tonight with hearing your perspectives and your stories, and I think this is so important. I dream of a theater community that has the empathy that you all have to be here tonight. So thank you so much. And you guys have a great evening. Thank you for taking your time to be here. Thank you, Rashad. We're so honored to have you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you guys so much.
Have a great night, and I hope to see you soon.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye, you guys. Thank you.
I dream of a theater community that supports all stories.
I dream of a theater community that supports radically inclusive storytelling.
I dream of a theater community that supports every voice.
I dream of a theater company that centers the voices of Black, Latinx, Asian, MENA.
I dream of a theater community that allows all the voices to be heard.
Indigenous, disabled, and trans playwrights all the time.
Where we all feel we belong.
You know why we need new and emerging artists? Because you can't create a rainbow with just one color.
Abingdon supports emerging artists.
I feel it's imperative to support new and emerging artists, to give them a platform to share multifaceted stories.
So that we can experience new talents, and through that we can all learn and grow and be able to understand the world in a different way.
Emerging artists offer a new voice and a fresh perspective to theater work.
It also brings community, opportunity, and confidence.
Supporting new and emerging artists means opening a door to extended learning and unlocking true and brilliant potential.
It is important to produce BIPOC plays because how else are we going to get to know these stories?
Because our stories make up our culture and our history and our heritage. And the stories that we tell directly from our mouths to your ears cannot be edited, they cannot be censored, and they cannot be erased.
Because no one can tell our stories better than ourselves.
And we need them. We need this very specific perspective that only BIPOC artists have. We need all of them.
Because theater is a reflection and a response to the world around us.
Theater is life, and theater is back.